Yo, what is going on? My name is Gio from Gio Knows Nothing. As you could tell by the title, I don't know anything about anything I'm about to talk about, just so that you're pre-warned. This will be a music and sports podcast. When I say sports, I mostly mean wrestling. But if that's not your thing, I'm gonna sprinkle in some MLB, some NFL, some NBA, and of course some music talk somewhere up in there. I don't really know how the structuring is gonna go, but we'll figure it out as we go. First up, literally before I started recording this, I went on Instagram, just as a pretense. I'm from the Boston area. Go Sox. I don't like the Patriots. Don't even mention them. Go Niners. But before I started recording, I went onto Instagram, saw that Corey Kluber signed a deal with the Yankees. Obviously, I hate the Yankees. I love Corey Kluber though. He signed a 1-year deal, reported to be worth about $11 million, as reported by Mark Feinsand. Kluber, he hasn't had a fully healthy season since 2018. But 2018 is the last time he won a Cy Young. He also won one back in 2014. His stat line from 2014 to 2018, kind of nasty. 2.85 ERA with the 1.51 ERA plus. He averaged a little over 10 Ks per 9, over 1,000 innings, slightly above 1,000 innings. I'm hoping he does good, but also hoping he doesn't do good. Me being a Sox fan, but also the Sox I don't even think have a chance this upcoming season, so it doesn't really matter to me. I do like Corey Kluber as a player though. So staying with the Yankees, they also reportedly re-signed DJ LeMahieu, or they're getting close to re-signing DJ LeMahieu. The deal is reportedly 6 years, $90 million. Totally deserves it. He's been, in my opinion, the best second baseman in the league for the last 2-3 years. Last 2 years with the Yankees, he's had a stat line of 336, 386, and 536. Led the league in batting average with 367, on base 428, and OPS above 1,000. He finished third in AL MVP voting last year. He's a very good glove, very good. If you have 2 outs and a runner on second, you could guarantee that LeMahieu is gonna poke that ball to right field and score that run for you. I hate to say it, me hating the Yankees, but geez, this is a good get for them. Another great get of another great player going to a team who I've been a fan of ever since I was a little kid. The New York Mets acquiring Francisco Lindor. Lindor is without a doubt my favorite player in the league, because of my Hispanic heritage, me being Puerto Rican, him being Puerto Rican, him being like the heart and soul of not only the Puerto Rican national team in the baseball classic, him Javi Baez and Yadier Molina essentially, but also I just like the way he carries himself, the way that he's a great two-way player. He's great defensively, he's great with the bat switch hitter, has power from both sides, Gold Glove caliber defense, and I think his defense is low-key the best asset he brings to the Mets. I believe I saw on MLB Network that they were like 26th, I believe, in defensive WAR last season, around their 25th. I love Lindor, man. I'm still a decently big fan of the Mets. They have a nice young team. They have Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, another Puerto Rican, Thomas Nido, as one of their catchers. They're still in the hunt to get Bauer, I believe, so they just added Trevor May. They still have Edwin Diaz, all these players. And obviously Jacob deGrom, back-to-back Cy Young Award winner. Still, in my opinion, the best pitcher in the league. So, I'm going to be on the lookout for this Mets team. I had a little talk with my boy Raymond, shout out to Raymond and Lester, in our little group chat about this, and I told him that I think on paper the Mets have a better team and have a better chance of winning the wild card spot above the Marlins. They're kind of hyping up the Marlins, but I'm not hopping on the bandwagon. The Marlins are a good team, don't get me wrong, But I just think, at least on paper for now, but especially if they acquire Bauer as well, the Mets have a very, very solid chance at making a decent run next season. But one team I believe will not be making any kind of run next season, the Boston Red Sox. What the hell are the Boston Red Sox doing, man? Have they made any deals so far this offseason? I have a computer right here. Let me look this up. Alright, so last I remember, and last I'm even looking up here, the last thing they said was that they were going to trade Andrew Benintendi, which honestly I don't think would be that big of a loss from our team. He's kind of like a below average bat, but he's decent defensively, he has good speed as well. Yeah, they're probably just going to end up trading Benintendi. It also says that they're trying to make some moves before spring training starts. So I hope they do, man. I just want them to get something. They like at this point they're not going to acquire one of those big names like Lindor, probably not even Bauer, like not anybody close to that. But I want them to at least not completely go into rebuild mode because they still have a lot of good pieces on that team. That if they build around them, if they build around JD, Rafael Devers, and Xander Bogaerts, if they just add pieces around them, they need way better pitching. Our bullpen is atrocious. Our starting pitching is atrocious. Hopefully Chris Sale comes back and he's phenomenal again. But hey, man, I don't know what the hell the Sox are doing. Quickly shifting focus over to the NFL. This past weekend, we had the wild card round in NFL. Really fun, entertaining games. There wasn't really one game where it was decidedly a blowout, really, except for maybe if you count the Buccaneers. I mean, it wasn't really a blowout, but they kind of handed them. Speaking of the Buccaneers, they beat the Washington football team 31-23. Tom Brady had good game. I'm not that big of a fan of Tom Brady, as you saw from earlier when I said I don't like the Pats. I don't like Tom Brady. I'm sorry, New England. Please don't hurt me. But I do believe this is going to be Brady's last game of this playoff season because next he's facing the Saints, who beat the Bears pretty handily. I take back what I said earlier. This was definitely a blowout. Mitchell Trubisky just didn't show up. I remember posting on my Twitter that like retweeting the quote. He said that he watches the Last Dance doc before every game, and I said, oh, this is like listening to Pop Smoke to hype you up before a workout and then just not working out. And in true fashion, right after I tweeted that, essentially he played a horrible game. Sorry, Bears fans, if there's any of you listening. The Browns beat the Steelers 48-37. They were beating them way worse, and somehow Ben Roethlisberger just did some Ben Roethlisberger type shit. He ended up throwing 68 passes for over 500 yards. He had 4 touchdowns, but also 4 picks. I don't see the Browns surviving the Chiefs at all, really. I think they'll put up somewhat of a fight, but Patrick Mahomes is just a different breed, man. Ravens beat the Titans 20-13. They held Derrick Henry to only 40 yards. Reminds me of last year's playoffs when the Niners held them to like 17 or something like that. It was a small amount. That's all I remember. Go Niners. Rams beat the Seahawks in honestly somewhat of a surprise win for me because I kind of had the Seahawks going to the conference championship, whatever it's called, the conference championship or whatever, probably against either Saints or Packers, but they ended up losing in the wild card. Russell Wilson only threw for 27 passes, 2 touchdowns, 174 yards. Not that great of a game. Jared Goff only had 1 thumb, and he won this game. And when I first got in there, the Bills were completely mollywopping the Colts, and I hate Phillip Rivers, but somehow he almost made the comeback. They only lost by a field goal. And yeah, that's it for last week's games. But this upcoming weekend, we have the divisional round. And I'm going to try to give you my predictions. Again, I don't know anything about anything, so I'm probably going to get all of these wrong if I had to guess. So, Rams-Packers. I think the Packers are going to win this one. I thought the Rams weren't even going to win last weekend, and they somehow did. Aaron Rodgers had a phenomenal season. He's just a different beast, man, and he has been for so many years. But it's like he just keeps getting better and better every season that he's not injured. Great guy all around too. I like his mustache. I don't even know if he still has a mustache, but I want one like that. Browns versus the Chiefs. Like I said earlier, I don't see the Browns surviving this one. Patrick Mahomes is a different beast. They have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, second best tight end in the league, behind George Kittle. So I got the Chiefs winning that one. Bills versus Ravens is, in my opinion, the game I'm most anticipating, just because I'm a fan of both of the quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson is just, I was like, a lot of people compare him to Mike Vick, but at this point, I think if he keeps up this pace for even like 3 more seasons, you could probably maybe say that he's already better than Mike Vick. Hot take, maybe. I don't know anything. Just remember, I don't know anything. So, yeah, if I had to pick a winner, I think the Bills are probably gonna take this one. Actually, are they at home? Oh, yeah, they are at home. So, yeah, I think the Bills are gonna win this one, especially since they're playing in Buffalo. Shout out to Buffalo. Shout out to the whole Griselda, GXFR, Benny, Conway, Westside Gun. I just copped my Bills and Benny collab sweater, so I'm kind of a pseudo Bills fan. So go Bills. And then we have Bucks versus Saints. If This is kind of rough. I was talking to my dad earlier about this one. If I had to pick, I think the Saints are gonna win. Drew Brees, I think, has a fire lit under him, especially if this is his last season and he's actually going to retire after the season. I was telling my dad I think Brady's probably going to play after the season, maybe 2 more seasons, and then he'll probably retire. Until then, I don't really see them going past the Saints. Yeah, I'm going to pick the Saints on that one. So, yeah, so that means my matchups would be what? Packers, Saints, Bills, Chiefs for the conference championships. We'll see if I'm right. We could always look back on this. If you want to come back and tell me I was wrong, that's cool. If you want to come back, tell me I was right, that's even better. Until then, let's move on. In the NBA, we have, the only thing I had written down here is the James Harden trade, because it's basically the biggest thing that has happened within the last couple days. This trade shook everything up. It set my Twitter, at least, my Twitter timeline, in a frenzy. This trade, in my opinion, if the Nets don't win within the next 2 or 3 seasons, they're going to be the losers of this trade. I don't see them necessarily winning this year, just like deep into the playoffs, just because their bench is so weak now compared to not last year, but what it could have been or what it was before the Harden trade. Because they got rid of Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, and Karis LeVert. So the Nets got James Harden, the Rockets got Victor Oladipo. This was basically a 4-team trade. Nets got James Harden, Rockets got Oladipo, Exum, Crooks, I believe. 3 Brooklyn first rounders, one Milwaukee first rounder, 4 Brooklyn first round pick swaps. So the Rockets, they get Oladipo, who in my opinion is one of the more underrated players in the league currently. Dante Exum, who I have a strange beef with, believe it or not. Wait, is that Dante Exum? Is Dante Exum Australian? Is that who I'm thinking of? Yes, Dante Exum. Me and Dante Exum have a weird beef because I believe it was NBA 2K18, I think, maybe, like the last 2K I actually really played for real. The one that had Kobe, right? R.I.P. Kobe on the Legends cover, maybe. Me and him have a weird beef because in my player, during that game, while I was playing, I got drafted to the Jazz, and he was on the Jazz at that time. He was their starting shooting guard, I believe. Shooting guard, small forward. and my character was a point guard. So I stole the starting point guard job from whoever was their starting point guard that year. And Dante Exum started beefing with me in storyline because I wasn't passing him the ball enough. And I'm like, bro, I'm still averaging like 11 assists. What do you want from me? It's like it's not my fault that we're not winning. So fuck Dante Exum. No, I'm just kidding. So they get Dante Exum, who's decent. That was such a long-winded story for nothing. What a great podcast. The Pacers get Karis LeVert and a second rounder, and the Cavs get Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. Like I said, I don't think if the Nets win within the next 2 or 3 years, they'll be the losers of this trade just because they gave up so much, so many picks, and so many of their key role players. Spencer Dinwiddie is out for the rest of the season as well. Who honestly, going into the season, I had as my sixth man of the year, and he probably would have won sixth man of the year if it wasn't for him going down with an injury. So basically, their only real role player off the bench is Joe Harris, I believe, who's a nasty shooter, but he's essentially just that. He's just a really good shooter. So yeah, that's basically all I had for NBA. Moving on to the wrestling portion of the show, AEW. I started with AEW just as a ground rule. When I talk about wrestling on the podcast, I'm only going to really talk about what I watched in the last week. I don't necessarily have time to watch literally everything because there's so much wrestling out now, but I try my best. I have a job. I work out a lot, but I still try to watch wrestling because it's probably the main reason why I started this podcast. Either that or music. But yeah, I love wrestling. If I'm not a historian on anything else I talk about, the thing I'm closest to a historian in some sort of regard is wrestling, and even then I'm still an idiot. I don't know anything. So yeah, starting with AEW. AEW started with Pac versus Eddie Kingston. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. Eddie Kingston is just a beast. I've been up on him, I think, since he was in Impact last. That's really around the time I started to pay attention to him, and he was in Evolve for a little bit, and I saw him live there, I believe, twice. And yeah, Pac I loved ever since NXT. So, I was kind of hyped for this match. This kind of disappointed. I mean, it didn't really disappoint me. It was just more so underwhelming. It kind of felt like a squash match because Pac got most of the offense in. Especially in the beginning, he kind of just came out and stormed the ring and attacked Eddie Kingston for just constantly beating the shit out of him. Which is understandable because Pac had been off TV for 2 weeks because he got DDT'd on the chair like 2 or 3 times. So, understandable. It kind of felt like a squash. It had like some weird camera cuts in the beginning of the match. Besides that, there were some good dives from Pac as usual. Eddie Kingston cut a promo before the match, which is kind of just short and sweet. Said he was going to beat the shit out of Pac, but he didn't really. Pac ends up going over with the Black Arrow immediately after he gets the 3 count. He locks into Brutalizer again because Eddie Kingston has just constantly beat the shit out of him. After the match, standoff ensues with Butcher and the Blade and Death Triangle. Lance Archer comes out. The heels powder. They run away. Archer kind of gets in Pac's face. He doesn't really intimidate him. He just more so tells him, yo, we need to get on the right page or else we're both going to just keep getting our asses kicked, and that's not good for you or me. I mean, decent match overall. I'm a fan of both these guys, like I said earlier. They kind of randomly turned Archer face. I'm kind of interested to see if this ends up with either him actually aligning himself with Death Triangle or it leads more so to him just eventually beating the shit out of Pac. But yeah, if they have a match, it would be like Will Ospreay, Archer, Will Ospreay versus Archer vibes kind of from G1 Dallas last year. Not last year, but 2019. I believe that match took place. Great match. Another kind of weird match that I was hyped for that I felt like kind of under delivered was Miro versus Chuck, next match on the card. Miro is obviously Rusev in WWE. For those who don't know, Chuck Taylor, I'm a fan of him. He's hilarious. I love watching his shoot interviews. Him and Chuck Taylor, Jesus, him and Trent, two of the funniest dudes. And you add Orange Cassidy, who I met once, really cool guy. He was in character the whole time. I asked him for a picture, he just said sure, and I asked him how much, and he said free. That's it. He said like 2 words to me, and I love him. Chuck got the majority of the offense in to start the match. At some point, Kip attacks Orange Cassidy on the outside. Soon after that, Miro takes over the match. Essentially, after he took over the match, after Kip got involved, it was a squash match from there. He super kicked him into I believe the game over, I think they're calling the accolade, the camel clutch, whatever name you know about it, that Rusev used to do in WWE. I think they're calling it game over, kind of, it fits his character, I suppose. But then again, I kind of don't like the way that they've been booking him so far. I don't necessarily understand or gravitate towards his character like I do some other people on the roster. I do love Miro though, fantastic in-ring competitor. If you've ever seen an interview with him, he seems like a great, genuine, humble ass guy. And per the stipulations of this match, since Chuck lost, he now has to be Miro's young boy, which is essentially his maid, his butler. So we're probably gonna get some nice little vignettes in the upcoming weeks. Hopefully funny as hell, because Chuck is just funny as hell. Probably him doing like some laundry, washing some dishes, I don't know, baking a chicken, taking care of Miro's chickens. I don't know if he has chickens, I'm just saying he has chickens. After that, we had Inner Circle in-ring promo. Jericho comes out, fans sing his song as usual. I love it. I don't even think when AEW came to Boston that was a thing, and ever since then they haven't come back because of COVID. So I just want to experience this live, man. I just want this COVID thing to be over so I could go watch wrestling live with my friends again. It's probably the thing I miss the most, honestly. During this promo, I came to the realization, if that's even a thing, that Sammy versus MJF is going to be the future of AEW. Both of these guys are tremendously talented. Jericho's on record saying that he originally wanted MJF in the Inner Circle. Now he has MJF in the Inner Circle as well as Sammy Guevara. I'm interested to see where this tag team match next week goes. That they set up during this promo. This promo was hilarious as usual. And next week they announced it will be one of my favorite tag teams again. Shout out my Boricuas as usual. Santana and Ortiz versus M Jericho F. That is my name for MJF and Jericho. That should be their name on TV. M Jericho F. Don't ask me how I came up with it. Versus Sammy and Hager. The Sammy Hager. A little bit they did in the ring, I didn't really get it until I went onto Twitter after the show and realized that a lot of other people my age, I'm only 22, also didn't really get it, and found out it's one of the lead singers of a rock band, and that just lets me know that Jericho found that really funny since he's a rock star as well. After that, Dark Order promo backstage, R.I.P. Brody Lee, of course. I cried for maybe like a week straight after he died. I don't know why his death hit me so much. Honestly, I do know why. It's because he just inspired me to be myself, never give up on myself, since he never gave up on himself. And it just sucks that right when he had the best 8-month stretch of his career, he finally got away from WWE and was able to show who he really was. His life tragically had to end the way that it did, and at just the time that it did, and he's going to be sorely missed forever. But anyways, back to this promo. I love all the Dark Order because of their bits on BTE. They're hilarious. If you don't know, they've been trying to recruit Hangman Page. They announced next week Hangman's going to be tagging up with them. They ask when he's going to let them know if he wants to join the Dark Order or not. They suggest next week after the match. He agrees. So I'm interested to see what happens next week. He's either going to make their lives by actually joining, or he's going to completely swerve them and break their hearts by saying no. I'm glad the Dark Order is faced now because they could actually show their personalities and not just be weird semi-cult people, I think. I really like how this was filmed like a BTE skit. It was hilarious because they were fangirling over Hangman Page essentially, and the camera pans out and he's just standing right there, right across from them, just shaking his head and drinking his whiskey, as Hangman does. Next up on the card, we had the Elite, I have here, quote unquote, versus Danny Limelight and the Varsity Blondes. Shout out another Boricua, my man Danny Limelight. It's my first time actually seeing him in ring, but I followed him on Twitter simply because he's Puerto Rican. This is gonna be a common thread. I'm very proud of my heritage. Always gonna support my own people. Always, always. But anyways, he's very smooth in the ring. He started out with Kenny Omega. Good Brothers were probably put into this match because it was reported that Nick hurt his leg really bad. They also said it in BTE that his leg was hurt last week when Jack Evans did that 630 and Nick got his knees up. He literally just fucked Nick's shin up. So he'll be out for a couple weeks. I'm assuming they were maybe supposed to be in this match, maybe not. Because even last week they weren't really showing the competitors in the match. They just kept showing the Elite logo. We see some nice little triple team offense from the Elite. Carl Anderson pulls out one of the best spine busters I've ever seen, as he usually does. He has one of the best spine busters out right now. He ends up picking up the pinfall after a Good Brothers hit Magic Killer on Danny Limelight, I believe. After the match, Mox comes out. He runs straight into the ring, trying to avenge himself because of the attack these guys put on him last week with the barbed wire bat. Lucha Bros come out. They make the save kind of randomly, but also I kind of saw the writing on the wall as soon as they came out. I'm like, oh, the Young Bucks are probably going to come out. Something's going to happen between them. And that's exactly what happened. Mox ends up hitting a big suicide dive to the outside. He brings it back into the ring. Young Bucks come out to try to keep the peace. But eventually, after a little bit, they start to kind of size up Mox, trying to test his gangsta, and Mox ain't like that. But people that didn't like it more, Lucha Bros, came in and they literally just super kicked both the Young Bucks' heads off. The brawl continues in the ring. There was a bunch of AEW dark guys out there, I believe, unless I'm mixing up the weeks, brawling in the ring, and Callis and Kenny kind of just powdered in the background and got out of harm's way. Next up, we kind of had a kind of weird segment. I didn't really necessarily mind most of it until the weird direction it took towards the end, like actual directing, like camera direction and stuff. The waiting room with Britt Baker and Cody. Rebel is hilarious. I believe her comedy is underrated. She just makes me laugh, and I don't know if I'm just stupid or if she's actually funny, but she makes me laugh, so I don't care. Britt Baker is the best heel in women's wrestling right now, and honestly one of the best heels just in general in wrestling, in my opinion. Jade Cargill ends up coming out. She has a great look to her. She's humongous. If she was towering over Cody by like at least like 4 inches. She's probably like a good foot taller than me. She's built like a motherfucker. She has muscles on her muscles, and she's a beautiful woman. She comes out, she cuts a decent promo on Cody, ends up pie facing him, asks who her opponent is since Brandy can't be there to wrestle her since Brandy's pregnant. Red Velvet comes out, they exchange slaps, and pull apart happens. And this is kind of after this is when the directing kind of got a little clunky for me, because he started playing video from a couple weeks ago when Britt Baker attacked Thunder Rosa backstage. And I was so confused because I looked away from my screen for half a second, looked back, and I'm watching this footage that I just watched a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, what is going on? But then they cut back to Britt, and she's telling them to play it, to kind of try to embarrass Thunder Rosa. But then Thunder Rosa comes in with a nice little YouTube vlog, and she says that her and Tony Khan spoke. Her and Britt are gonna have a match at Beach Break. I believe February 6th, something like that. It's the next big Dynamite. That's all I know, and I'm gonna be watching because that match is gonna be disgusting. I love Thunder Rosa. I love Britt Baker. They're both amazing. That match is gonna be a banger and a half. Next, we had FTR versus Jurassic Express. This is the first time I watched both NXT and AEW simultaneously. I had AEW up on my TV and NXT playing on my computer, and at the same time that this match started, the Rascals had debuted on NXT, and I'm a big fan of them since I'm a big mark for TNA. Shout out to Joe Delazapa, you fucking mark. I'm a big mark for TNA. I'm a I'm a big fan of these guys since they were in TNA for I believe like about a year and a half. They somehow never won the Impact Tag Team Championships, but that's besides the point. They were debuting on NXT about this time. They're making their entrance, I believe, so I got kind of distracted with that. So I started watching after the first commercial break with the FTR Jurassic Express match. FTR was beating the fuck out of Marco post commercial break. Marco is obviously one of those guys that it's really easy for you to get behind and have sympathy for. Jungle Boy comes in for the hot tag. The story of this match is kind of Marco Stunt getting the shit beat out of him, tagging and Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy gets the upper hand for his team, tags Marco, and Marco gets the shit beat out of him again. So he gets the hot tag. He clears house, ends up hitting a nasty brainbuster on Cash. Marco gets tagged in, and Dax takes his head off with a clothesline, JBL style. It was hilarious because I went on Twitter and Instagram after the show and saw that before the show. He had 2 different polls saying, "Do you guys dare me to clothesline Marco Stunt's head off tonight?" And everybody said yes. Man, he did exactly just that. Tully sends Marco into the ring post on the outside towards the end of the match, and then Tully ends up leading Jungle Boy into a shot from Cash on the outside. Cash throws Jungle Boy into the barricade, throws Marco back into the ring. They end up hitting Big Rig. They changed the name of their finishing move to Big Rig as a tribute to Brody Lee, RIP again, for the win. So yeah, FTR got the win over Jurassic Express. This was a pretty good match for Jurassic Express. I'm a fan of both of them. Kind of sad Luchasaurus wasn't in this match because he's somebody else I'm kind of upset with the way that they've been booking him, because he came out the gate really hot and they kind of didn't necessarily capitalize on it. I don't remember if he got hurt or something like that. Maybe he got hurt. I honestly don't remember right now. But yeah, I wish they were doing more with him. I also understand that he's on the older side when it comes to professional wrestlers and stuff. But I don't know. If they're not going to focus on him, they might as well at least focus on the 2 younger guys. Next we had NWA women's match, second to last match on the card. Serena Deeb versus Ty Conti. Honestly, I didn't pay that much attention during this match, not because I didn't want to, but because I was just on my phone and being an idiot. So I was kind of in and out of this match. Serena Deeb trained Conti at the beginning of her career in NXT, as mentioned on commentary. Ty Conti was someone I wasn't really a fan of in NXT. I also necessarily didn't get to see that much of her on TV, and whenever I did, she was losing. But it's kind of great to see how far along she's come in the ring. She was keeping up with Serena Deeb move for move, chain wrestling for chain wrestling, transition for transition. But also I believe that just goes back to what I said earlier, that Deeb trained her in the beginning of her career. Conti has a nice judo background, I believe, so she was doing some nice judo throws and shit in there. Good technical wrestling to start. Conti had a nasty pump kick that literally sent Serena Deeb out of the ring. After the commercial, Conti hit a nice variation of the stunner. Serena Deeb ends up getting her into a nice stretch muffler. It was a nice little transition. Serena Deeb ends up going over at the end with her finishing move Detox, which I believe is kind of like Tommaso Ciampa's fairy tale ending. So yeah, good match from them. Serena Deeb, she's very smooth in the rig. Ty Conti has shown that she's improved so much ever since she left NXT earlier last year. I'm still trying to get used to this being a new year. Fuck 2020. Next we have Darby Allin versus Brian Cage in the main event for the TNT Championship. I love both of these guys so much. They're legitimately 2 of my favorites in AEW. The beginning of the match, Darby Allin goes for a suicide dive, but he gets caught with a suplex on the outside, like literally caught, like mid-suicide dive by Cage, because he's just a disgusting human being in a good way. Cage, at one point, military press slammed him from the inside of the ring through the timekeeper's desk on the outside, and I didn't know what to do with myself at that point in the match, because I thought Darby was dead, but he wasn't. He was bleeding though after that table spot somehow. I don't really necessarily know how that makes sense, but they wanted him to bleed, so he did. Darby gets the absolute shit beat out of him in this match. He ate 2 power bombs, I believe, flipped off Cage, and then Cage picked him up and power bombed him over the top rope onto the stage. Again, I'm just like, why does Darby Allin hate himself? Why does he make me hate myself? He makes me question my own mortality and what I'm willing to put my own body through. Because he's just something else, man. I don't know how he keeps getting up, how he keeps coming back every single week, ready to defend the TNT title, never running away from any fight. He's just a beast. I've seen him wrestle a couple times too live for Evolve. I think maybe 3 times, 2 or 3 times. I met him once. He was a cool, chill ass dude. Seemed like a really great guy. Cage did his deadlift suplex from the outside in. And somehow, some way, Darby Allin kicked out at 1. I stood up out of my seat because I just didn't. I don't know anymore. Cage takes a back bump onto the steel steps, and it made me cringe so bad because me going back to being such a big fan of TNA, or Impact, I mean. He was a Impact champ, I believe, like a year and a half ago, and he ended up breaking his back in the match that he won the championship in against Johnny Impact, and it just made me cringe because he had just been hurt in that same exact region fairly recently. Darby Allin ended up hitting a coffin drop while Cage was laying on the steel steps. Ricky Starks tries to get involved from the outside, but Sting appears out of nowhere and hits Ricky Starks in the throat with the baseball bat and one time in the stomach, and that gets Ricky off the stage. Darby ends up winning with a crucifix bomb off the top rope into a pin. And again, after the show, I went on Twitter and I read that this was a great callback to how his feud with Team Taz, or Taz in general, basically started when Taz first wanted to recruit him. Taz brought up that Darby did the crucifix pin wrong on Cody in their TNT championship match, allowing Cody to reverse it and then get the win. Darby said that he didn't want to join Taz. He knew what he had did wrong and that he was never going to do it wrong again. And he proved to Taz that he wasn't going to do it wrong again because he just beat Brian Cage with the crucifix. Great match. Darby literally went through hell. I don't even know how he was walking the day after, but he was somehow. What a freak. I love him so much. Alright, on Monday I had Monday Night Raw playing in the background. This is usually how I watch most wrestling during the week, like if it's SmackDown or Raw, because I'm not as invested in the WWE main roster as other rosters and shows that are out there, so I'll have them playing in the background as I'm playing video games, listening to music or something. But Raw has been horrible for a little bit now. SmackDown has been on a roll, and Raw has just been getting worse and worse as the weeks go by. Drew McIntyre contracted COVID. It took their WWE champion, to contract COVID for them to even acknowledge it on their programming. They would just constantly say that we're living in weird times, fans aren't in the stadium, and all of this, but never had the wherewithal to make some sort of public service announcement to tell people to be safe and wear masks and that COVID-19 is a real thing until their champion came down with the illness. But better late than never. I don't necessarily subscribe to the automatically hate everything WWE does. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt from time to time, but sometimes you got to use your platform responsibly, especially if you are the biggest wrestling company in the world, at least numbers-wise and popularity-wise. So, since Drew McIntyre was supposed to face Randy Orton, I believe, for the WWE Championship, they kind of had to call an audible, and the whole show kind of felt like it was probably rushed to get written and organized before the show even started. Because we had people fighting in back-to-back matches. We had a tag team win a match and then fight each other for relatively no reason. Well, yeah, let's go in order. Triple H came out to start the show. He was supposed to make some sort of announcement, but then he got interrupted by Randy Orton. As soon as Triple H came out, I knew he was gonna be fighting somebody tonight, and then Randy Orton came out, and I'm like, I don't want to see this. But, they made the match official, essentially. Main event, Randy Orton versus Triple H in some sort of fight. Charlotte Flair had a match against Lacey Evans. I don't like what they're doing with Charlotte. If they didn't have anything creatively captivating for her, I don't necessarily see why they brought her back so early. They could have just saved her return for the Rumble as a surprise, but instead she came back and now she's in some sort of feud where her very old father is trying to get on Lacey Evans' good side and like snuggle up with her and be a creepy old man. I don't want Ric Flair on my TV, really. He's a very old man. I don't think he should be traveling if he is traveling because of COVID, and I think they could just give Charlotte a better story than her feuding with her very old father. Yeah, Charlotte ended up losing this match too, which was stupid because they didn't want Rhea Ripley to pin her at WrestleMania, and she ended up going to NXT and completely derailing Rhea Ripley's momentum and all this shit. But then they give her a little bullshit loss versus Lacey Evans on a random Raw. I don't know, man. I don't get their booking sometimes, really. Jeff Hardy versus Jackson Riker. I didn't even know that this match happened, if we're being honest. Did this match even take place? Or am I tripping? I don't know if I just zoned out or if I was on my phone. I remember seeing Jackson Riker on my screen, and I probably just tuned them out because I'm not a big fan of Jackson Riker for reasons. Uh, Political reasons. He's an idiot on Twitter. He's an idiot. Next up we had The Miz and Morrison versus Sheamus and Keith Lee. Sheamus and Keith Lee won this match kind of single-handedly. I'm getting tired of all of these Keith Lee tossing John Morrison into the Miz spots because they've been doing it basically ever since Keith Lee debuted, and I wish he was on SmackDown because they would be using him so much better, and he would be an actual formidable opponent for Roman Reigns. But instead he's on Raw just doing random shit. I don't even know what the fuck they're doing with him. Finish of the match, saw Sheamus tag himself in, hit a bro kick, and then they hugged and shook hands afterwards. I don't really know, man. Apparently something happened during the commercial break too, and they got mad at each other, and they ended up having a match literally right after. Like, the commentary didn't say what happened, and they were just as confused as we were. But they had a good match. Sheamus has been on some shit recently, bro. Like, in ring, he's really stepped it up. I used to really hate Sheamus, but now I actually kind of look forward to seeing him in ring at least, just because he's been putting on decent matches with just about anybody. Keith Lee is a beast. I love him. Keith Lee could have a good match with anybody if they just let him be Keith Lee. And yeah, I don't know where this is necessarily going to go. Probably some sort of type of feud, but I want to see Keith Lee back in the title picture, maybe for Mania. Maybe, hopefully. Next up, we had T-Bar versus Xavier Woods. Shout out to T-Bar, fellow Massachusetts man. It's from Worcester, Mass. Shout out Dijak. Decent match. I honestly don't remember watching much of this one either. But after this, T-Bar went on Twitter, said some stupid shit about Sammy Guevara. Kind of turned me off to him, but then he started making fun of that idiot that posted some shit about slavery or something. So he's back in my good graces. Shout out to him. Bobby Lashley versus Riddle. Again, I don't know what they're doing with Riddle. Like, they kind of built him up a little bit just to have him tap to Lashley, and then he had a match with MVP after, which wasn't really that much of a match. It was just more so for them to beat the shit out of Riddle some more. Next up, we had Gulak versus AJ Styles in a very pointless match. AJ is my favorite wrestler, and I like Drew Gulak too, because I was a big fan of 205 Live back when that was more of a thing. But this match made no sense, because backstage Pierce told Gulak if he beats Styles, then he'll have a spot in the Rumble, and then he just goes out and loses to AJ Styles. So I don't know if this is going to be a thing where he gets a match every week to try to make it into the Rumble until he wins like the week before the Rumble, or maybe on like the Rumble pre-show or something, and then he's finally in the match. But even then, it just didn't really make that much sense, at least so far. We'll see where it goes. For Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax versus Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose, I honestly didn't watch much of this match. Don't even remember really anything about it. I do love Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax as a tag team. Kind of upset that they had to end up losing the women's tag team straps just to further the story, or eventual story we're probably going to get with Asuka and Charlotte Flair. But you never know, maybe they'll give them the straps again soon. And we have in the main event Triple H versus Randy Orton. Again, this wasn't really much of a match, really. Triple H went outside to go get a sledgehammer, brought it back inside, lights go out, sledgehammer catches on fire. Lights go back up. Triple H is gone. Alexa Bliss is in the ring. She shoots a fireball at Randy Orton, and that's pretty much the end of the show. Randy Orton sells the fireball for what felt like forever. Like I was just waiting for him to just go off air or just get the camera off of him. But they kept it on him for like a good 2 minutes of him just selling the fireball attack. But yeah, lackluster, very lackluster Raw. Kind of par for the course recently though, unfortunately. But yeah, SmackDown is currently going on as I'm filming this, or it just finished actually. I'll have a review on that next week, hopefully. But yeah, SmackDown has been really good. I'm kind of looking way more forward to that than I am on Raw every single Monday night. Last but certainly not least, in our little sports wrestling section, we have Impact's Hard to Kill coming up tomorrow, Saturday. Hopefully today when you're listening to this. If not, it's happening January 16th, 2021. Like I've been saying, I think it's like the third time I've said it. I love Impact. They've been on the up and up since about 2016, 2017 is when I got back into it. They have a little pay-per-view show. I'm going to be checking in, watching that. In the pre-show match, we have Brian Myers versus Josh Alexander. Josh Alexander just split up with Ethan Page. I was a big fan of the North, but I also love both of them individually, and I'm happy Josh Alexander is hopefully going to get a nice little singles run. I think he'll go over Brian Myers here. And then we have Rosemary and Crazy Steve versus Tennille Dashwood and Caleb Conley. Rosemary and Crazy Steve just got back together, and Rosemary stood tall on the go home. But I'm gonna pick Rosemary and Crazy Steve to go over here. Just because they just reunited. I like both of them together. I'm not so much a fan of them separately, but together their aesthetic just complements each other, obviously, with the face paint and stuff. Next up, we have the Karate Man versus Ethan Page. Ethan Page isn't even signed to Impact anymore. His contract expired. So I think they'll probably use this to write him off of TV, or just write him out of the company in general, unless he decides to come back, which I do think Ethan Page should stay in Impact, just because, like me, I became a fan of his because of his love for old school TNA. So I know how much the company in general means so much to him. So yeah, I think the Karate Man is probably gonna win. Apparently he filmed this back in like November, so he knows who won at least. I think the Karate Man is probably gonna win. End up writing him off of TV and out of the company. Next up we have Eric Young, Joe Doring, and Cody Deaner versus Tommy Dreamer, Rhino, and Cousin Jake in an old schools match, which I think is just like a hardcore match. Eric Young, ever since coming back to Impact after getting released from WWE, he's been kind of streaky with me. I liked what they were doing originally with him when he attacked Rich Swann, and he ended up winning the title in that Fatal 5-Way. But since then, he was kind of dipping down in my when it comes to my interest in him. But then he added Joe Doring, who's a big dude. I haven't really seen much of his work, I think, except for a squash match he might have had on Impact a couple weeks ago. Eric Young having these two younger guys below him that could learn from him could be good in the long run. I am a big fan of Jake something, Cousin Jake, though. He's a big dude, really agile. He's good in the ring, in my opinion, from the stuff I have seen. And I think he's probably going to get his payback on Cody Deaner in this match, and they'll probably end up picking up the win, in my opinion. Next, we have Tasha Steele. Shout out Mi Boricua. She's a local here, too, in Massachusetts. I've seen her wrestle in Chaotic Wrestling. She was their women's champion the last time I went to a Chaotic show, and she's great. I love her. She's just a little ball of sass and attitude. She's phenomenal. Her and Kira Hogan, beautiful woman. She's improved in the ring from the first time I saw her in Impact to now. It's going to be them against Havoc and Nevaeh in the Knockouts Tag Team Championship match in the finals of their little tournament. Going into the tournament, I had Havoc and Nevaeh winning it just because they were the two powerhouses of the tournament besides Jordan Grace and Jazz. But they actually beat Jordan Grace and Jazz. So I think Tasha and Kira are gonna win it. They've been doing a lot of good promo work. Their chemistry together is unbelievable. They just play off of each other phenomenally, and I think they could carry the tag team division for a little bit. Deonna Purrazzo versus Taya Valkyrie. This is gonna be a great match. I'm a big fan of both of these women. Taya Valkyrie has been carrying. I'm not gonna say she's been carrying, but she's been a very prominent figure in the Knockouts division in the last. What, she's been there for 2 years, I believe, 2 years maybe. She's longest reigning Knockouts champion ever. For a whole reign, I believe, unless Jordan Grace beat that. If not, she's second. I don't know anything. Again. But this match is going to be great. Deonna Purrazzo has been phenomenal ever since she got released from WWE as well. I'm a big fan of her. I see her retaining in this match, just kind of to add to her reign. Her being one of the best Knockouts champions, if not the best Knockouts champion in like the last 5 years, maybe 4 years. But yeah, I think Deonna Purrazzo is going to go over in that match. Next up, X Division Championship. I'm a big mark for the X Division ever since back in the day. We got Chris Bay versus Manik, who's just TJP, versus Rohit Raju. I think Manik is going to retain. He'll probably pin Raju. I don't know what kind of shenanigans they're going to get into in this match. I love Chris Bay. I haven't seen much of Rohit Raju, honestly, and I'm not that big of a fan of TJP, for reasons. And yeah, Chris Bay went over this past week on Impact, so that kind of rules him out of winning this match, which kind of leads me to my prediction of Manik picking up the win. Probably going to pick Rohit Raju or make him tap out, something like that. Next, we have Edward Edwards versus Sami Callihan. A shout out to Eddie Edwards, another Bostonian. This is the biggest toss-up of the night, in my opinion. It's kind of like them going back and closing out their feud that they already closed out. But I don't care because I loved their feud from a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. I was actually in attendance for Eddie Edwards' first match back after Sami Callihan broke his face with the baseball bat, and I met him that day. Great guy. Phenomenal guy. He seems like a really great guy. He was really comforting to me. He was like the first wrestler I really met, now that I think about it. And he was just a beast. I love him. And for that, honestly, that reason alone, I'm picking him to win just because I like him. I have favorites and I don't care. Eddie Edwards is going to win this match, and even if he doesn't, he's number one in my heart. Love you, Edwards. Next in the main event, Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Rich Swann, Chris Sabin, and now Moose. Since Alex Shelley won't be at the show, they didn't necessarily disclose why. Hopefully it's not COVID related. If it is COVID related, I wish him a speedy recovery. This match, honestly don't know what's gonna happen now that they added Moose to the match. Because in my opinion, Moose is the only person in Impact who can conceivably beat Kenny Omega. At least currently, unless they end up building somebody else up. But I don't necessarily see Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers losing this match. If they do end up losing this match, probably Carl Anderson's gonna end up eating the pin if he ends up getting speared by Moose or something. Moxley could come out and cost them the match, or I would assume that they're gonna save the Moxley appearance for a little later down the line. But I don't see them losing this match, so I think the quote-unquote elite is going to go over in this match. So yeah, that's Impact's Hard to Kill. Tune in if this goes out before the show comes out, or even if you're listening to this after the show comes out, buy it and rewatch it, because I'm sure it's going to be a phenomenal show. Impact hasn't really let me down in a little bit. So yeah, I don't really expect it to start now. And speaking of hard to kill, one thing that's hard to kill about me is my love for music. So let's get into it. Recently, I've dove into Jadakiss' catalog. I had heard a few Kiss verses growing up, but I also have never been as in love with hip-hop or just music in general as much as I am right now. I think it started because I was listening to an old Joe Budden podcast, and Charlemagne was on there talking about how Black Rob mopped Mace on 24 Hours to Live, which I had never heard up until that point. But they were talking about how Mace is like not even top 5 Bad Boy MC of all time. I haven't even gotten really into Bad Boy that much, so I can't even say definitively or not if that's a hot take or not. But I did listen to 24 Hours to Live, and I don't think Mace got washed by anybody on that. Like I think they all had good verses. Like everybody had just had good verses. If anything, I thought maybe Jada had the best verse. Either Jada or Styles had the best verse in my opinion. I just love Jada's voice and his flow, his delivery of everything just sounds so hard even back then. So yeah, I listened to that song he has with Chinks. What is it called again? I have it on my workout playlist. Dope House. Chinks featuring Jadakiss. Dope House. Good ass workout song, honestly. Besides that, the St. John album from last year, kind of getting into some R&B alternative type shit. St. John album from last year still in rotation for me, honestly. I listened to the whole thing front to back again for I think like the fourth time, maybe fourth or fifth time in like the last month. Today at work, and that album is phenomenal. Honestly, my favorite R&B album from last year, if you even consider St. John R&B. If not, honestly, just one of my favorite albums in general from last year. The album has bangers on bangers on bangers. There's not one skip on that album, in my opinion. And even the one he put out before that in 2019 was phenomenal as well. So check out St. John if you haven't. He's fire as fuck. Benny announced Plugs I Met 2 with Harry Fraud. Harry Fraud had a low-key, pretty banger last 2 years. He's been pretty consistent for the last 2 years. He's been putting out really good beats, really good songs. If Benny's debut album last year with Hit Boy is any indicator of what this is going to be like, then it's going to be a phenomenal album, because that Benny album from last year was my album of the year for a while. Like, the only album that kind of came close was Conway's From a King to a God. Besides that, Burden of Proof by Benny's my album of the year from last year. And he's coming out with Plugs I Met 2. Plugs I Met, the first one, is kind of how I first got into Benny. After my boy Kevin, shout out Kevin, put me onto Griselda in general. I started listening to Benny more. I listened to Plugs I Met. That album is incredible. The second one I hope is going to be incredible too. It's definitely not the only body of work he's going to drop this year, because those Griselda boys never stop working. I'm hyped for it though. I'm hyped. They just put out the Conflicted soundtrack too, I believe last Friday. I listened to that all the way through. They had a Lloyd Banks song on there I fucked with. The Griselda song with I think Armani Caesar, Benny, and Westside was a banger on there too, and the Hurt Business. Shout out to WWE and the Hurt Business. Black excellence as usual. What was I even talking about? Oh yeah, Hurt Business on the Conflicted soundtrack. Wale smoked that song, like smoked it. Like there was no pulse left. What was the bar he spit on that? Hold on, bro. I need to look that shit up. Yo, Wale said, "Falloran poppin', fiends coppin', that's my young one. A lot of shoppers don't look like rockers because they're young bucks." If you watch wrestling, the Rockers, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty, the Young Bucks, they're literally inspired by the Rockers. They look like the Rockers. Everybody compares them to the Rockers, but the double entendre, Fiends coppin', that's my young one. Fiends, a lot of rockers don't. A lot of shoppers don't look like rockers. Like rockers, like they smoke rock, crack rock, but they're Young Bucks. But rockers like the tag team and the Young Bucks. Insane, bro. Wale killed that shit for real. But yeah, Griselda boys always hyped for whenever they dropped. Really looking forward to that. Plugs I Met too. New Flo Milli song came out. I've heard a lot about Flo Milli. I'd never really listened to a song except for that TikTok song she had, I think. But Kenny Beats produced this one. He posted it on his Twitter. The sample sounded insane, so when it came out, I had to give it a listen. And like I expected, the sample on this song was insane. Kenny Beats killed that beat, and she was flowing on that shit. Flo Milli shit, gang shit. I don't really have a good segue for this, but RIP MF Doom. We lost him. They announced his passing 12/31/20. Last day of the year. Last year, we didn't find out he passed until 2 months after, which is the most MF Doom way to go out. He was mysterious his whole career up until the day he died. What a legend. I never really got into his music while he was alive, and that seemed to piss some people off on Twitter. I remember after he died, what was it, like 4 of his projects I think were in the top 10 on iTunes, I believe, or something like that, or on some sort of chart, and people were mad because it's like, oh, why weren't you guys supporting Doom this much when he was alive? And I feel like gatekeeping in general, but like especially in hip hop, is just become such a terrible trait when it comes to the community. It doesn't necessarily matter when or how somebody gets into a legend's music, as long as it gets to them, or as long as they get to it. Like please don't kill me. For a long time, I said that Jay-Z was very overrated just in general as a lyricist, as a music maker, as a legend. I still respected everything he did, but in my mind he was overrated until I went back and listened to Reasonable Doubt and the first Blueprint, and I'm like, nah, Jay-Z is that guy. And everybody has appropriately talked about him like he's that guy. Like his ranking is very serious, and it makes a lot of sense to me now after going back. You can't hate on me for that. I was a little late to the party, but I made it. I showed up to the party. I didn't come empty-handed. I still got some potato salad, macaroni salad, Caesar salad. I make salads now. I'm a salad man. Get with me. Prayers up to Dr. Dre. Just want to say that quickly too. That was a terrible way to start the season. This feels like a season. Extended season of 2020. 2021 has been up and down so far. The Capitol, the storming Capitol shit. Oh god, I'm not even gonna get into it. But yeah, prayers up to Dr. Dre. He suffered a brain aneurysm. Last I checked, the last update I had, unless there's been another one, was the statement he put out that he's in stable condition and slowly getting better day by day. So yeah, prayers up for the god. Uh, Shout out to Mac Ayers. He just dropped an EP. Listened to it, very solid. My first time listening to his music. Shout out to Rory from Joe Budden Podcast. I brought them up earlier. They're also a big influence on me starting this shit, so shout out to them. Rory put me on. He shouted out Mac Ayers. First time I heard him shout him out was like last year, I believe. But I didn't really dive into his music until he dropped this EP and Rory shouted him out again. I'm like, I guess I gotta listen to it now. Very dope EP. I believe it was only 7 songs, maybe 8 songs. There's only 8 songs. Nice, quick listen. Really fucked with it. Check out that Mac Ayers EP if you haven't. It's called Magic 8 Ball. Great EP. Nick Caution also dropped today. He dropped an album, EP type playlist, compilation, whatever people want to call it nowadays, called Anywhere But Here. I haven't gotten a chance to listen except for a couple songs. I listened to the singles basically, the Joey Badass song and the song with Denzel Curry that came out. Didn't necessarily like the Joey Badass feature on here. It kind of just seemed like just like phoned it in verse, but I've also just kind of felt that way with Joey's last couple of features. Besides the Boogie song, he absolutely killed that. But since then, he's just kind of been dropping kind of like microwave verses. If this is what his next album is gonna sound like, I kind of don't fuck with it. Just cause like it just sounds like he's phoning it in. Like it sounds like I hold Joey to a different standard because I've listened to him since I was in like 7th grade, I think, and I graduated high school almost 4 years ago. I don't even know how many years. Like 10 years. I don't know. Like for a long time, ever since Waves came out, and I met the dude. One of the last concerts I went was his concert, and I love the dude, and I love his last album. But we've also been waiting for music for what 4 years. If he comes out with verses like he had on Nick's album, or like he had on the Reason remix to Extinction, he had one of the worst verses out of, like, if you tally all them up. Me and my boy Kevin were talking about it. Like, if he comes out with just microwavable verses, then I don't really want it, especially if you're comparing it to the last project we had from him, which was All American Badass, which was all content driven, hard ass beats, hard ass rapping. I just don't want Joey to phone it in for a whole album. That pretty much wraps it up. Um, Shout out to everybody that made it this far. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I'm gonna try to put these out every single week, hopefully every single Saturday, hopefully, if not every other week. Yeah, I'm gonna try my best and make this some real ass shit. Got some other shit coming. we're gonna be putting in the work. Hopefully, y'all coming along for the ride. If not, you will eventually. Trust. Hope everybody stays safe. Wear your mask. Coronavirus is real. Love y'all. Peace.